Imagine a continent so rich, it contains enough minerals to power the world's future, enough farmland to feed billions, enough rivers to generate massive amounts of electricity, enough young people to become the largest workforce on Earth. Now, imagine that same continent remaining poor, unstable, divided, dependent, and exploited. How is that possible? How can a place blessed with almost everything still struggle with poverty, corruption, conflict, and foreign influence? Was it bad luck? Bad leadership? Or was it something much bigger? Because if you wanted to destroy a continent, you wouldn't need bombs. You wouldn't need armies. You wouldn't need nuclear weapons. You would only need a few carefully designed systems. Systems that quietly drain wealth, reward division, and keep entire nations trapped for generations. And nowhere is this story more visible than Africa. This is not a story about victims. This is not a story about blame. This is a story about power, about economics, about history, and about how some of the richest lands on Earth became trapped in one of the most devastating cycles in human history. This is how to destroy a continent. Let's start with a simple question. What makes a country rich?
Most people say money, but money isn't real wealth. Real wealth is resources, energy, food, labor, technology, and productive assets. By that definition, Africa should be one of the wealthiest regions on Earth. The continent contains enormous reserves of gold, diamonds, copper, cobalt, lithium, oil, natural gas, rare earth minerals, and many of the critical materials needed for electric vehicles and modern technology. Look at your smartphone, your laptop, your electric car. There's a good chance some of the minerals inside came from Africa. In fact, much of the world's cobalt comes from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Without these minerals, the green energy transition slows down dramatically. Yet despite this resource abundance, many African nations remain poor. Why? Because resources alone don't create prosperity. Control does. And for centuries, control belonged to someone else. If you wanted to weaken a continent, the first thing you would do is destroy unity. In the late 1800s, European powers gathered around conference tables. Maps were spread out. Borders were drawn. Entire nations were carved apart with rulers and pens, not based on culture, not based on language, not based on history, but based on imperial interests. Tribes
that had lived together for centuries were separated. Rival groups were forced into the same countries. Artificial borders became permanent realities. The result? Future instability was practically built into the map itself. Many of today's political conflicts can trace part of their roots back to these decisions. The strategy was simple. A divided population is easier to govern. A fragmented region is easier to exploit. And when independence eventually arrived, the borders remained. The divisions remained. The tensions remained. The empire left, but many of its systems stayed behind. Now comes the second step, extraction. Imagine discovering gold beneath your house. You become rich, right? Not necessarily. Only if you own the gold. Throughout history, enormous amounts of wealth flowed out of Africa. Raw materials were exported. Finished products were imported back. The value creation happened elsewhere. Factories were built elsewhere. Financial centers emerged elsewhere. Technology ecosystems developed elsewhere. The continent often supplied the raw ingredients, while others captured most of the profits. This pattern became known as the resource trap. Countries rich in resources often become dependent on commodity exports. When prices rise, money flows in. When prices crash, economies suffer. Instead of diversification,
dependence grows. Instead of manufacturing, extraction dominates. Instead of innovation,
short-term resource revenue becomes the focus. Ironically, the very resources that should create prosperity can sometimes weaken long-term development. Economists call this the resource curse.